So could you talk a little bit about the difficulties that you encountered when you were the Solicitor General and the pressure you faced from the state leaders?
The difficulties that I faced with the state leaders? Well, I had very, very few problems with the state leaders, and I cannot recall very much of any problems that I had with them, except for this one outstanding case at the time, and that was the case of the former secretary to the MSA, that is the Malaysian Singapore Airlines, or Malaya Singapore Airlines, the secretary to that airlines. You see, he had maligned the chairman of that airlines, who was a very good friend of Lee Kuan Yew, the Prime Minister of Singapore at the time. Now I must explain a little bit here. The MSA in those days was the Malaysia or Malaya Singapore Airlines. It was a joint airlines between the Malayan government and the Singapore government. And this person, Jerry Fernandez, was the secretary to the airlines. But instead of being very, how shall I put it, neutral in his position, he was siding the Malaysian side against Singapore. And the chairman of this MSA was a person, Yong Pang Hao, who later became the Chief Justice of Singapore. He is a bosom pal and a crony of Lee Kuan Yew. So what happened was, he was accused of having done something wrong, and as a result of which he escaped, if you like, to England, where he stayed for a while. And Singapore, at that time I was then Solicitor-General, under the instructions of Lee Kuan Yew, we asked for his extradition to Singapore. And of course he resisted. And the case went up to various levels of court in the UK. But to cut a long story short, he was finally brought back to Singapore. Now, I was then in charge of the matter, and his lawyer came to see me, and oddly enough, it was a person called Ben Jayaratnam. Ben Jayaratnam is a bête noire of Lee Kuan Yew, his closest and dearest enemy, you know. Ben came to see me on behalf of Jerry Fernandez and asked him that he be released on bail. And I told him, look, are you mad? Or do you think I'm mad? Here we have spent thousands of dollars to bring your client back to Singapore, and you want us to release him on bail? So, well, he pleaded, he explained to me why I should consider seriously. So eventually I said, all right, provided you can put up so many, I raised the amount of bail, and we will consider that. So eventually he was able to raise, I cannot remember whether we asked him in terms of millions or not, but anyway, he was able to give me satisfaction, and I decided to release him on bail, and after that all hell broke out. The law minister came to see me, called me up. The Prime Minister's office, all hell broke out, you know. And it didn't bother me because I knew I was doing the right thing. And the gist of all the attack was, do you realize how much money we have spent to bring this man back from England? And then you just release him on bail? He escaped to England, you know. So I said, yes, I know all that. And then I said, I hope he goes away, he runs away, you know, and then we will have so many 100,000 or million or whatever it is in the government's kitty. The Minister for Law couldn't believe his ears. But anyway, that was the limit where and the government was concerned. So they didn't quite like my very independent way of doing things, you know.
So that was the only big problem?
That was the only one. Other than that, I mean, they knew me to be a very strict prosecutor. And I didn't care who was involved, whether it's a minister or not. You see, I remember now that I'm talking to you, an instance where one of the ministers, who is now dead, Minister for National Development, he told the police, he interfered, which annoyed me, you know, because I said, this is outside his jurisdiction. He was a Minister for National Development. This is the Attorney General's department, the prosecutor's department. We decided to charge a person for illegal parking or whatever what have you. And the minister rang up and said to the police, release this fellow because he was his constituent or whatever. And the police were shocked, you see. At the time, they didn't know what to do. And they came to see me. I was the only one who would stand up and say, oh, no way. I said, you can tell the minister straight from me, he is not to interfere. I am in charge. If he wants the person not to be prosecuted, he should talk to me and ask me. And if I'm nice and he talks nicely to me and I'm in a good mood, I might agree. You know, and this got round, and so none of the ministers interfered with me in my work.
Okay, could you talk a little bit about your experiences when you were detained by the Internal Security Department?
My experiences in when I was detained by the Internal Security Department, you know that I have recorded that in my book it's called To Catch a Tartar, published by Yale University, Southeast Asia Area Studies. However, since not many people can have access to this book, it's available, you know. I recorded there what really happened, the method of interrogation, the bullying, the sleep deprivation. You've been given very thin clothes and standing without, in my case, I stood in one place 17 hours, you know, and I was amazed at the end of the interrogation for that session that I could have stood for 17 hours without shifting, you know, like here I'm talking to you, I'm moving here and I'm moving there, but over there you stood in front of these guys, and there are lots of them, and you know there are lots of them because you can see shadows. There's a spotlight that is trained straight onto your face, and it's very, very unpleasant, to put it very mildly. And these guys are behind the spotlight, and they're shouting and screaming at you. After a while, I begin to tell myself, these guys not interested in my answers. They are just trying to bully me, you know, to harass me. And I said, okay, if that's the way they are going to play the game, I am not going to answer a single word. So I stood very quiet. They shouted, they screamed, they asked questions. I refused to answer because they were not listening. If you know what I mean. The idea was to disorientate me. At the same time, the room was very cold, very, very cold. They have these powerful air conditioners. Blowing very cold air, and you know these bees, is what I call them. They will be going in and out of the room because it's so cold. And then I noticed through the corner of my eye, these guys all had wind cheaters, sweaters on, and here was me standing there with a loose short pants and a loose sort of a jacket, not a jacket, a shirt, not even a shirt. You know, one that you pull over your head. And but actually, other guys got it worse. They got water thrown over them to make them even feel colder. If you know what I mean. Yeah, but in my case, I think 17 hours non-stop. I've never been in that kind of position before. And I promise you that you cannot stand 30 minutes without moving. But I did it in 17 hours. Even to this day, I'm amazed. I guess the explanation for that was the adrenaline that goes pumping through you, you know. And then there was an inner anger within me that and these, I hope you were going to use some bad words. These guys were my subordinates, you know. That's why they were cowards, hiding behind those powerful lights.
Talk a little bit about why you think you were detained and
why? Oh, that's very simple. That's also recorded in my book, To Catch a Tartar. Lee Kuan Yew, to some of you may not know who he is. He was the first Prime Minister of Singapore, under whom I worked for many years. And so I knew the man very well, you know. Now, he has got a bee in his bonnet about certain things. Firstly, he thinks he's a bit of a Sherlock Holmes, you know. That he could pinpoint a guy, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy or whatever. And if he suspects a person to be a spy, a US spy, or spying for the Malaysians, or spying for the UK government, no, not so much the UK government, Malaysia and the US, because he does not like the US at that time. Oh, I have lots of his sayings running down the US amongst many things, you know. Anyway, once he gets into his head that you are a communist, you are in trouble. It doesn't matter whether you are or you're not. Worse if you are not, you know, because if he says you are, you might as well accept, yes, I am, surrender. You see, he had 22 young men and women arrested and detained in the Internal Security Department, by the Internal Security Department, because he got a bee in his bonnet that these young men and women, who were all professionals, lawyers, social workers, church workers, was all arrested because he said he suspected that they were Marxists. You see, in those days, being a communist was no longer, well, how shall I put it? It was not the fashion. It was passé, you know. So, but how do you therefore label these guys? And he came up with the idea that they are Marxists. And so they all were arrested. And most of them were Roman Catholic church workers, lawyers and so on, but they were church workers, you see. And eventually it was pointed out to them that, that they couldn't possibly be, they were released. But it damaged their careers, you see. But it doesn't matter. And what does he say? He just laughed it off, and he says, anyway, he says, if we don't stop them now, they might become Marxists along the way. Come on. This is not the way to run a nation. Just because you have a certain fixation in your head that these guys are Marxists, and therefore they're arrested. Now, before the Marxists, he labeled a batch of lawyers and so on and so forth who also do-gooders as Euro-Marxists. Nobody had ever heard of that term, Euro-Marxists. Why? Because because some of these guys had contacts with the European members of Parliament in Brussels. Okay? And so in his suspicious mind, say these guys must be up to no good. So they were all arrested and labeled by him as Euro-Marxists. What do? He's the boss, But how many lives he has ruined in this way? He is bad business as far as I'm concerned now.
Could you talk a little bit about what you and I were speaking about earlier?
Oh,
How they tapped your phone lines, they followed you all over the place, and how they eventually arrested you?
Oh yes, you see now. To continue with my earlier story, where he got a bee in his bonnet that I, an American spy, that I had been paid by the CIA, vast sums of money, to go into politics. But let me explain first. You see, how did he get this bee in his bonnet that I was a CIA? You see, he couldn't find any explanation. Why is this man, who was my former Solicitor-General, who wasn't even interested in politics, or did not appear to be interested in politics, suddenly become very political? That something must be wrong. Somebody must be behind him. His warped mind, he's got a sick mind, there's no doubt about that. So he began to think that, okay, I am an American agent. And so they mounted an exercise on me. And here am I, like a bloody fool, actually. I should have known better. I've been in this game, as it were, as Solicitor General, and I knew what has been happening to all these people. But I didn't take it very seriously, I was telling myself, I was rather insouciant about it all. I said, well, he can't really think that I'm a communist, that I am a Marxist, that I'm a Euro-Marxist, I'm a fellow traveler, so what can he label me with? How stupid of me, really, when I look back on it, that he chose that I'm a CIA agent, that I'm an American agent, American government agent. This is all on record, Oh, and they had to explain my arrest in Parliament. And this is the cock and bull story that he and his son came out with, that I was a CIA agent, that I was paid vast sums of money. So up to this day, and I'd like to take this opportunity once again to announce to the world, especially to the CIA, that I have not yet been paid by them. All right? So maybe this will reach the ears of the CIA. At least I have spent time in jail for being their agent, and for which I'm still yet to be paid. So maybe this meeting is quite good. This interview will be very good for me. That the CIA will eventually reach their ears, and that they will pay me the sums that the Singapore government said that they had promised me. Well, anyway, to return now, and I get carried away. This is a pet topic of mine. They tapped my phones. They mounted a surveillance on me, and my correspondents were all surveilled. And yet, you know, how simple I was when I look back on it. Here is this man, supposed to be sophisticated, did not see through that I was being followed. And later on, when I was under detention, they told me, "Look, we know what was happening but what was it they were interested? What was happening? That I was quarreling with my girlfriend over the phone, and this is the rubbish for which they have been following me and tapping my phones. You know the amount of money that was being wasted? Oh, I forgot to tell you. When I came to the States in 1988 as a guest of the Human Rights Watch, that was after I was released from detention, okay? The surveillance continued. Can you imagine it? They followed me. Oh boy! It's reported partly reported in the Wall Street Journal. They hired a firm of investigators here, and who followed me. I was then staying at the Roosevelt Hotel in New York, in Midtown Manhattan, as a guest of the Human Rights Watch. And then in between, whilst I was there, I decided to visit my former president of Singapore, who also was in bad odor at the time. All right, so I flew to Bloomington, Indiana, and from there I flew to Seattle to see my niece. And little did I know that I was being followed all this, and the whole thing just blew up when one of the hotel employees told me that I was being watched. You know, they were buying my rubbish from with my waste paper basket. The contents were being bought, you know, by this firm of private detectives. One of them is called Paco, I think, Vincente Paco, whatever it is. But anyway, I've got all the cuttings out. So that's a lot of money, you know, to spend mounting a surveillance on me in the States. What was, you know, the man's mad. Not only mad, you see, he's very malevolent, you know. But anyway, so what happened was, I had a colleague who was a member of parliament at the time. And I asked him to ask this question: how much did it cost? Firstly, did they mount an operation on me in the United States? And if so, how much did it cost the Singapore government? You know what was the Minister of Law's reply to the question raised in Parliament? It was money well spent. Imagine that. They got nothing, you know, because Lee Kuan Yew still believes that I'm an American agent. I don't know whether he still believes it now or not. If so, you know, I'm still waiting to be paid. That's all I know.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about why you decided to take part in electoral politics?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. You see, what happened is, all this is tied in with when he just found out that I was trying to stand for elective national politics, you see. And that was why I was arrested. And he said that the Americans were egging me. Those were the words he used, egging me on to go into politics, to take on the government of Singapore, because I could talk, I could explain. So you should go in. So I was detained 72 days by the Internal Security Department for, amongst other things, attempting to go into national politics, as if it was a crime, you know. But anyway, so when I was released, I told myself, look, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? You say that I was going to go into politics, all right? And for me not to do so would be very churlish, you know. So I should really go in. Take him on. I had two minds, should I or shouldn't? But he was the person, the force that pushed me over into politics.
So why is it that the detention did not deter you from running for the election?
Well, you know, that is in my character. I was seething with anger inside me, you know. I wasn't cowed. If he thought he had cowed me by detaining me in prison for 72 days, then he's got me all wrong. He thinks that I'm like one of his guys, that they're all scared of him. They are, you know. It's amazing. All these ministers in the cabinet, every one of them is literally scared of him. That what he might say about certain things they do is quite pathetic. I've seen this in action when I was Solicitor-General, and I'm seeing it still today. All these ministers, every single one of them is not worth the money they're being paid, because they're all scared of him to do the right thing, to do the right thing by the people of Singapore. So I told myself, look, I must go in. Not to go into politics would be cowardice, you know. Political cowardice, and I was not prepared to do for that.
So they didn't deter you from running for the elections because Lee Kuan Yew didn't mind that you were running? Or?
No, Lee Kuan Yew didn't want me to go in because, look, I was his law officer, you know, his top law officer at that time. And if I were into the opposition, what do you think is going to happen? Mm-hmm. Life can be very difficult, right? Mm-hmm. So he he thought, well, you know, this guy is chicken. I will put pressure and he will just ease off. You know what he says? Generally speaking, he says that he does not like to be loved. He says, I prefer to be feared than to be loved, you know. This is from Machiavelli, you see. Because if you are loved, then that's bad. But if you are feared, then you are successful. And that is how he holds his ministers all in awe of him. It's quite pathetic. I've seen this happening. Likewise, many of the senior government officers, they are all literally scared of him. What would he say? What would he say? I said, what the hell do you care what he says? If you think it's right, do it. That was my motto. You know, my Attorney General, oh, he was pathetic. When he was asked by the Prime Minister's secretary to see him at 2:30 in the afternoon or whatever time, The man literally shakes, quakes with fear. You know, he comes in to see me and say, "What do you think he wants?" I say, Who wants?" He says, "The Prime Minister." I say, "I don't know. What does he want to see you?" He said, "Yeah, his secretary just called." And I say, "Well, why didn't you ask the secretary? Why do you ask me? How do I know?" "Oh, come on, man. Try to guess. Try to guess. What is he wants?" You know, you see how they're so scared of him. This is my boss. He's the number one. I'm the number two, you know. He's the Attorney General. I'm the Solicitor-General. And he was so pathetic, it's not true. And I've been to cabinet meetings to see these ministers all, they quake before him. And he would just, it's a one-man show, you know. And I very often like to, before he then, you know, this is his usual style. He says, "Well, if there's nothing else," then he terminates the meeting. I said, "Well, just one more thing. One thing." And he says, "What's that?" You know, I always like to keep it to the last. I said, "Have you thought about this, that, and the other?" And he's very ungracious, you see. He will say, "Do what he says," meaning what I say, to all these. This is the man whom everybody fears. Sad. That is sad for Singapore.
Could you talk a little bit about your thoughts on the present political situation in Singapore under Lee Kuan Yew or Lee Hsien Loong?
Well, you see, the situation has not changed at all since under Lee Kuan Yew or under Goh Chok Tong, the one who succeeded the Lee Kuan Yew, and now by his son Lee Hsien Loong. The situation is very much of a muchness. Lee Hsien Loong talks about, "Oh, we must now relax, get people to talk, come out and talk more." And the people are not stupid. They know if they come out to speak, they will be chopped off. So what's the point? It's pathetic, you know. If you read in the papers, he gives a speech. I'm talking about Lee Hsien Loong now, the Lee Kuan Yew's son. He wants to show that he is the nicer, kinder personality than his father. So he encourages the people to speak out. What they don't like about Singapore, speak out. Let's hear you what you have to say. And then we will, oh my cat, look at him, or look at her. You know, he wants to be a kinder, gentler Singapore. He was taking the words out from President Bush, Bush's father. You remember? Like a kinder, gentler America, society. The people of Singapore are not stupid. They don't say, and he keeps on saying, come out, say what it is. Until you say out, we don't know what is it that you want. What is it we can do for you? The average Singaporean may be many things, but he's not stupid.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit on your thoughts on why Lee Kuan Yew is obsessed with running his opponents out of the country, bankrupting them, or jailing them?
Answer is very simple. You see, the whole structure of government, from the time he took office to the present day, has been designed in such a way that his son will succeed him. And the son has succeeded him, you know. Now, in order to preserve that legacy that he has passed on now to his son, all the troublemakers have to be run out of town, to use an American expression, okay? And behind all this grand scheme of things is the word I'm looking for is the dragon lady, Lee Kuan Yew's wife. She is the one with the overweening ambition for her son to take over. You know, she is the one who has been advising Lee Kuan Yew what to do, how to do it, etc. Many people don't know this, but I'm telling you today, the power behind the throne, you know, is the dowager, the dragon lady, if you like, and she's very smart, and she is smart. And that is why all these guys have to get out of the way, and they have to be ruined. Or like me, driven out of the country. If I were to go back, I would go straight from the aeroplane, straight to jail. You see? He has not taken any steps to bankrupt me, but he has taken steps to drive me out. Okay? There are others who are outside the country now, I mean, who have in one way or another have left, you see. Jayaratnam now is now almost toothless. Jayaratnam, I must explain, was he was a lone opposition leader for a long time, until he was joined by Chiam See Tong, who is in the words of the Prime Minister himself, factless. He is a kind of a opposition type that Lee Kuan Yew likes. In other words, he's ineffectual, but he serves for cosmetic purposes. Excellent to appear as an opposition, because if anybody says, "Oh, you have no opposition," oh, look, this is Mr. Chiam, he is a member of the opposition. Now they have another one, I mean, who is no more, no less than what Chiam is, Chiam See Tong. It's sad, very, very sad. All the good men, they are either too clever by not sticking their necks out, or they leave the country. You see, in my case, maybe you could say I was stupid by going into politics, but I felt that once I put my foot in the waters, I better go in for the swim.